Every year, Minecraft transforms itself with a new update, bringing us all back to our old survivor worlds. But what if I transformed everything in the entire game into the ultimate survivor world? Hang on, didn't I already do that? In 2021, I set out on the ultimate task, to transform all of Minecraft's structures and biomes to create one giant multi-biomed island. But this time, I'm taking things to a whole new level. Not only will I be transforming every in-game structure and biome on a much grander scale with brand new build inspirations from across the world, but I'll also be creating an entirely new dimension, adding custom quests, shaping a unique backstory for the game, reimagining mobs in epic boss battles, and even reviving some of those mobs that we lost to Minecraft's mob votes. And I'll need your help every step of the way. You guys get to decide what's included. That's your cue to hit up the comments and subscribe so you don't miss a thing. So to get started, there are a few things on today's agenda. We've got to choose our island's biomes, plan the map layout, create the base map, add all the vanilla structures, and even transform our first biome. To choose which biomes made the cut, I of course had to ask you guys for some opinions. And you had a lot of them. So when this island looks like a crazy color wheel, I'm blaming you guys. So with 13 main biomes in mind, without even including caves, oceans, or the dimensions, it was time to actually plot out a plan for our epic multi-biomed island. Steph got to work drawing out this insane plan of the project, and this process really helped us visualize how we could incorporate all the key aspects of Minecraft survival on a single island, and how we'll bring ours and the community's ideas to life in each biome. You guys really wanted us to make a couple of custom biomes, so we planned some completely new, original biomes, along with some reimagined versions of Minecraft's vanilla biomes, and of course our staples like the desert and jungle. You guys highly requested the Cherry Grove, Pale Garden, and Mangrove Swamp this time, so we of course made some plans for those biomes and some structures that we think would suit them. Each biome has several fantasy themes, many inspired by real-world places that you guys wanted to see in the project, and that we'll travel to in person to learn about firsthand to really do them justice. Obviously, this is just a rough first draft, but you can already see how much more ambitious this project is compared with the first, and there is so much in store. Let us know in the comments which ideas are your favourites, and what else you think we should add. Before I build the foundations of the island, I'm excited to tell you guys that the original Ultimate Survivor world is finally out now on the Minecraft Marketplace, so make sure you Bedrock players go check it out. On top of that, you guys can download the USW Quest Pack for Java via my Patreon, which adds 20 epic quests to the original map, with unique bosses, a ton of custom items, puzzling challenges, and much more. Anyway, moving on to whipping up our island in World Painter. I pretty much stuck to the plan that we drew out for the biome layout, which was quite a challenge to get right. As much as I would love to plot out a really natural island that's geographically accurate, it's just not possible for this number of biomes on a single island, which is the whole challenge in this project. But to be honest, something about this sort of biome color wheel is pretty satisfying, and separating the sections with small rivers helped me establish some clearer boundaries that would allow me to terraform each segment more easily. So, how did the USW2's biomes end up like this? Well, since this map is sort of like a clock, we thought it would be cool if its backstory related to time. It is said that the island was once whole, but the rising energies from the end portal beneath it caused it to fracture, splintering into 12 distinct segments around the central biome. The rumblings of the Ender Dragon not only fractured the physical island, but it fractured its timeline, with each segment transforming into a snapshot of the island's past, from their equivalent of Earth's Ice Age, all the way to periods of volcanic eruptions. Seeing this in game is pretty surreal after so much planning, and we have an enormous space to work with. The basic terrain is looking awesome already, even though it will change a lot when I terraform in-game at the start of each biome transformation. And so, with the foundation set, I got to work making some in-game adjustments before getting started with placing our structures ready to be transformed. I'll be tackling the classic vanilla structures, so my first task was to extract a variety of vanilla villages and place them into their respective biomes. After that, I placed down 2 ruined nether portals, one in our custom volcanic basalts biome, which is said to be part of the nether spilling into the overworld, and the other on our tallest floating island, which will later be transformed into a portal to our new custom dimension. I'll also be revamping some pillager outposts in several biomes, in addition to the most iconic Minecraft structures: the Desert Temple, the Jungle Temple, the Ocean Monument, and of course the Woodland Mansion. You may have noticed that the mansion is located in the Pale Garden segment of the island. There's a whole lot of backstory behind what happened here, which will of course be revealed in the Pale Garden episode. On top of all that, we've got some pretty unique vanilla structures here as well, including the often forgotten trail ruins, which I've planned to incorporate into our floating islands biome, and even the experimental brick pyramid structure, which only existed in some of the earliest versions of Minecraft, but will be a fun transformation to tackle in our mangrove swamp. With all our vanilla structures in place, there's still plenty of space left for all the custom additions we'll add throughout the project, including some cool wandering structures for the island's wandering traders, a new stables structure where you guys will be able to buy custom mounts to ride when exploring the map, a battle arena where you can even fight your friends for rewards, and so much more. Anyway, I then got to work placing all the vanilla trees across the biomes, including the mushrooms in our mushroom biome and the ice spikes in our icy Arctic, which is actually a hybrid of the vanilla ice spikes and frozen peaks biomes. For the Pale Garden, I actually had to make some placeholder trees for the meantime, as I added them before the Garden Awakens update released, but they will all be switched out to the real deal by the next episode. With all these biomes and the vanilla elements set in place, I'm already feeling so inspired and have so many cool ideas. The Cherry Grove has been a biome I've wanted to transform since it released, and it would make such a cool spot for some Japanese-inspired architecture, and I'd love to add a custom deer mob to this biome. The desert is always such a fun biome to transform, and this time I like the idea of Babylon inspirations for the Desert Temple, and maybe some Polynesian influences for a village on the beach. Plus, it could be a cool spot to revive the crab mob that lost the mob vote. But I want to hear from you guys. What do you want to see me build in these biomes, and which biome are you most hyped to see upgraded? If you said the Meadow, today's your lucky day. Starting in the centre of the island, just like we did with the first USW, we're jumping straight into our first biome transformation. First and foremost, I wanted to make some subtle changes to the terrain, but nothing too drastic since this is our starting biome, and vanilla meadows tend to be pretty tame. Just like the plains transformation from the original USW, I also added some boulders to spice things up a bit and make exploration a little bit more interesting. I think these boulders are definitely an improvement compared to the first project, as I've learned so much since the first Ultimate Survival World series. And next, I got on with the trees. This time I really wanted to focus on creating some trees that felt true to vanilla Minecraft, exaggerating the size and some of the branch shapes, but focusing on making the general shape of the foliage feel quite rounded and almost bubbly, just like the original trees. In the oak trees, I also scattered in a couple of new Big Apple variants amongst the leaves using player heads, which you'll actually be able to collect from the tree, and they'll give you a little extra buff in comparison to regular apples. When the first Ultimate Survival World released, you guys mentioned that you didn't want to destroy the custom trees I'd built, which is very thoughtful of you. So, we've worked on a really cool solution this time around: custom saplings. Now, when you destroy any custom tree across the map, there's a chance you'll obtain a custom sapling that you can use to regrow my upgraded trees. Since they offer a fair bit more wood than vanilla trees, we even scaled up the time it takes for them to grow, so you have to wait a little longer to replenish your wood supply. This is just one of the many features we'll be adding throughout the project, based on all your feedback from the first USW map. While I placed down our custom trees, you may have also noticed some patches of different coloured grass in the terrain. These are plains patches that I added, because otherwise, certain mobs wouldn't spawn here in the meadow, including horses and pigs. And that just about wraps up the meadow terrain. Things are pretty simple for our hub biome, but it feels so nostalgic and true to Minecraft, and the perfect setting for the transformations to come. So, where do I start with the structure transformations? Well, what screams survival Minecraft more than the beloved dirt hut? It's not a vanilla Minecraft structure, but it is essentially the first thing every Minecraft player ever built in the game, and it's a staple to every survival world. On top of that, this structure will be an important hub for this island. At the centre of everything, it will be an archive of all your discoveries through your playthrough of the map and the key to completing the game. In USW legend, this was actually the original dirt hut, the very first of its kind, rumoured to have been built by none other than Steve himself. Starting as a basic dirt hut, providing shelter at the centre of this crazy island, legend has it that Steve expanded on his base over many years, creating the Island Archives, a hub for his research of the island's many biomes and the energies coming from the End Realm that caused this world's fractured biome phenomenon. To create the Island Archives, I was pretty inspired by Italian Renaissance architecture. Steph and I took a trip to Florence last year and its cathedral is mind-blowing. The dome is actually the largest brick and mortar dome in the world, and climbing it in 40-degree heat was not our smartest idea. But the intricate Gothic details of this building are so cool. The scale is so intimidating, and it just feels like the perfect inspiration for a grand structure like this. So I focused on getting the dome nailed first, using copper as a placeholder for now, so that I could easily replace the rooftops with a moss and grass gradient later. This is technically a dirt hut after all. I then worked my way down and carved out some intricate windows on the main tower. I know dirt huts are usually pretty stuffy, but one of this size needs a bit of light or else there'll be unwanted mobs spawning inside. I even built these statues around the main tower, adapted from one of the knight statues from my first ever world building project on the channel. Not only is it a fun little Easter egg, but it also fits so well with the Gothic vibe of this building. It's a bit like a friendly gargoyle, I guess. I never knew that real-world gargoyles are there to drain water away from the building's walls to prevent erosion. My statues are a little less useful, although they are said to represent 4 brave warriors, each hailing from different biomes across the USW too. I guess we'll hear more about them throughout the series. Anyhow, I finished up the main tower, and as you can see, this style we chose also really lends itself to what we have planned for the inside of the archives. We knew we need a large chamber in the centre, surrounded by 12 adjoining towers for each biome, so this worked perfectly from both a structural perspective and nailing the grand vibe we were going for. So, why are there towers dedicated to each biome? Well, every quest you complete across this map will lead you back here to the Island Archives, with the artifacts you have collected being displayed in each biome's dedicated tower, so you can track your progress and remember all the epic adventures you've been on throughout your playthrough. Each biome tower is connected to the main chamber by a bridge from the upper gallery, and all 12 interiors match the theme of their respective biomes. Anyway, to finish up the exterior, I added some grass and pathways before painting the build with a better gradient. Some nice dirt walls using some mud blocks, which didn't even exist when we made the first USW, and of course topped off with a grassy roof. Classic dirt hut style. You'll notice that inside the main chamber, I've built a large round slab hanging from the upper gallery. So, what's this for? Well, we actually wanted to take the biome clock concept even further. Not just as a cool bit of backstory about why the biomes are so different to one another, but something that will actually affect you guys when you play in the world and attempt the quests across the island. So, taking inspiration from the Hunger Games, each segment of the map will have special biome-related events that happen on specific days, some of which will be dangerous, and some of which you'll have to make sure you catch in time for certain quests. Each day, you can check out the biome clock here in the Island Archives to see which biome event is active that day. Before tackling the grand centerpiece of this giant central chamber, I wanted to really focus on some nice detailing throughout the interior, so that you guys don't feel disappointed when you step inside. Given that this build was somewhat inspired by the Renaissance, I really wanted the ceiling to feel special as well, just like those intricate painted ceilings we saw in Florence. If only I could whip out a paintbrush in game and paint a nice Minecraft mural for you guys. I also thought it would be cool to add a couple of giant banners. These are essentially tapestries woven by Steve himself, in honour of Minecraft's most iconic tools that helped him and so many other Minecrafters through their most perilous adventures. I then wrapped up the decorating for the central chamber with a giant chandelier hanging from a huge chain, with multiple tiers of torches to provide a bit of ambient light. As well as lots of vines to make this place feel overgrown and almost a part of the island. And for those of you lore enthusiasts out there, we had to include a lore library for you guys. The Island Archives will not only be home to quest artifacts discovered throughout your playthrough, but you'll also be able to bring lore books you find back here to the main chamber. And there will of course be an achievement for retrieving all the lore books and returning them to the archive shelves. And now for the most important part. In the centre of the Island Archives, you will find a giant gateway, securely locked by Steve himself, only to be opened by a brave adventurer who is ready to take on the might of the Ender Dragon. I'm sure you can guess what lies beneath this gateway, but how will you unlock it? Well, once you have recovered all the artifacts from a biome by completing all of its quests, you will unlock that biome's epic boss battle, in which you will face one of 12 custom bosses, some of which will be familiar to you, but with brand new abilities. Each biome's boss will drop a giant gemstone known as a prismatic core, said to echo with the essence of its home biome. Once retrieved, each prismatic core will take its place atop its biome's tower back at the Island Archives, marking the completion of the biome. So what happens once you've finally completed all the quests, defeated all 12 biome bosses, and obtained all 12 prismatic cores? Well, you may just unlock this giant gateway to the stronghold, which will transform at the very end of the series, along with what waits on the other side, of course. So that just about finishes off the Island Archives. This build has got me insanely hyped to get stuck into the project, and I feel like we've elevated things to a whole new level since last time. Not only is this building an epic nod to the dirt huts we've all built as survival Minecraft players, but it's going to have such a cool function within the map as a central part of the island and the gameplay. And I feel like seeing those prismatic cores appear above each biome tower as they're completed is going to be such an exciting feeling. Sometimes it's so easy to speedrun and get to the end without committing to a fleshed out playthrough, but this structure transforms the whole experience and adds so many new layers of challenges before you can progress. Anyway, let's move on to our next transformation, the Meadow Village. Okay, so we kicked off this journey with a transformation of every Minecraft player's home, so for the Meadow Village, we thought it'd be cool to take some inspiration from mine and Steph's real life home. Yep, that means I officially went outside and touched some grass, heading out on a little adventure to get some real world inspirations for our Meadow Village. We hit up some of the prettiest medieval villages and buildings that we could find to get a feel for how we wanted you guys to feel walking around the building game. Feeling inspired, I removed the vanilla village, which you may have noticed is abandoned. So, I wonder what happened here. I guess we'll find out later. Anyway, I also created some layers in the terrain so that our village had some different elevation points rather than plopping everything down onto a flat plain. Starting with our first villager profession building, the village temple, home of the cleric profession villager. Since the vanilla structure already resembles a church, and with our starting biome being inspired by medieval England, it made sense for my transformation to have those same inspirations in mind. As you guys know, this will be the first of many profession buildings I transform across the map, creating a special home for each of Minecraft's profession villagers. We'll of course take inspirations from across the world for future biomes, so that each village contains buildings that feel authentic to their inspirations. Now this building will of course have a full interior, but I'm not going to be spoiling all the interiors just yet, so you guys will only see a select few for each transformation, and the rest will be left for you to discover when you download the world for yourselves. For this structure transformation, I really wanted to focus on creating an elevated version of Minecraft's vanilla village temple structure, maintaining that steeple-like tower on one end. Usually I'd be inclined to add a spire, but since the vanilla structure doesn't include one, and most medieval English churches don't, I thought it'd be more authentic to leave it out for this one. This structure is a pretty large one to kick off our village transformation, but medieval English churches were always the largest buildings in their village, so I think we're nailing the vibe so far. Next, I got to work on a really special building, the very first custom profession building for the map, the tavern. I'm not much of a pub goer myself, but any fellow Brit out there knows that there's a pub or tavern in pretty much every English village. And this particular tavern is going to be the liveliest building in the whole biome. You'll see why when we head inside. For the details of this build, I really got inspired by the buildings we checked out in person, as well as the taverns I've enjoyed exploring in video games over the years. I wanted to create a main space for you guys and the villagers to commune, but also an adjoining tower for sleeping quarters, just like a traditional inn would have. To me, this is exactly how a cozy tavern looks in my head, with tons of tiny details from a little bath to flower pots along the windows, and of course, a big hanging sign out front. To really transform the in-game experience of villagers for you guys, we wanted to do something that made this place feel more lively and interactive. I built a cozy interior packed full of details, from wine barrels to custom player head tankards, but despite all the tiny details strewn throughout this interior, I wanted to take things to a new level. So for starters, at certain times of the day, you'll find a villager band inside playing an epic custom soundtrack designed specifically for this tavern, with the villagers gathering here for a dance, soaking up the vibes after a hard day's work. This is going to be the ultimate hangout spot to regroup with your friends after your survival adventures. On top of having a medieval dance-off with the villagers, you'll also be able to quench your thirst with our first new mob addition, the Innkeeper Villager. The Innkeeper will be able to brew you a variety of custom drinks should you bring along the materials needed to make them, and each will have custom effects. Each time you brew a drink, the Innkeeper will offer a new recipe with new effects you can try. Some will help you in your survival adventures, while others will be fun to prank your friends with. I've got to admit, I'm super proud of how the tavern turned out, and the ambience in here is absolutely unreal. Survival Minecraft has literally never felt so lively. Next up, I got to work on a staple for any medieval-inspired village, the weaponsmith. Technically, our third profession building, this one was pretty straightforward now that I'd established the style and palette I'd be using, with stone foundations, a birch wall gradient, and lots of beams. I built a nice balcony up top, and even made some custom banners to create a sign to hang on the building so that everyone in the village knows where to get their weapons, along with a little furnace and workstation outside to mimic the vanilla version. I won't spoil the interior for this one, but I think it's clear to see that this makes a really nice addition to the village. On a similar theme, I tackled our next villager profession building, the Toolsmith. For this one, I wanted to replicate the shape of the vanilla version, but with a little twist, keeping the workshop open to the elements. I built a large set of bellows to keep the furnace fires roaring, along with a ton of tiny details around the interior to bring things to life, so that it really feels like this villager has been hard at work and has left things lying around the workshop. All of these buildings will of course contain loot as well, but since the USW1 had pretty overpowered loot, this time we've actually made the loot scale depending on how many players are in the world, so things will feel super balanced, and there will of course be plenty of custom weapons, tools, and more to discover, as well as the usual loot you'd expect to find in Minecraft. Next, I just had to create another custom villager profession, as it just felt like such a good fit for this Meadow village. So this building is the bakery. Again, I felt like I had a really clear idea in my head of how I wanted this to look, with that classic red and white canopy out front. I also wanted to make sure I made this building big enough, as it would sort of be a general goods store for the villagers, as well as a bakery. In the smaller section of the building, I created a little bread oven and storage area where the baker can bake bread, obviously. And in the main section, I created a little stall of eggs out front, along with a whole range of goods on the inside, from pineapples and turnips to cakes and donuts. I had a lot of fun messing with different blocks and custom player heads to create all of these little details. And so, with the bakery detailed, painted, and set into place, I still wasn't finished with this transformation. At the bakery, you'll be able to purchase different baked goods from the new Baker Villager, with a mechanic similar to the Innkeeper's special brews. So before moving on, I paid the baker a visit and nabbed myself a donut to give me a little energy boost to get through the rest of the building. You'll also find the egg vendor villager out front, who will sell you different spawn eggs that can be really valuable for making spawner farms for the mobs you need, or even just for purchasing pets. Every few days, the egg vendor will sell a different selection of eggs for you to choose from, with specific materials being required to purchase them. Anyway, for the next building, I felt like I should tackle the farmer profession, another staple for any medieval-inspired village. So I started by setting out a quaint barn-like structure for the main building, sticking to the same style as the other buildings in the village. You may have also noticed the little rooster I added to the rooftop. This is actually inspired by a weather vane. A weather vane is a metal instrument used to indicate the direction of the wind. and the cockerel is a pretty traditional design for an English one, although weather vanes can actually be traced back to history all across the world, which is pretty cool. For this one, I was actually really inspired by hop kilns, also known as Osthouses, which have a really distinct structure, and this particular style is very unique to England. They're specifically this shape to allow wind to travel into the building to dry out hops, and I thought this could nicely link to our new tavern profession building, as the innkeeper could use the hops for the tavern's various brews. To add some more intricate details to the farmer's house, I made a little chicken pen before moving on to creating a water wheel to attach to the side of the building. I thought this would be a cool addition that perhaps the farmer uses to mill the wheat from the surrounding fields, and give the baker a helping hand in supplying the rest of the village with some nice bread. So with the final details added, I painted the farmhouse and set it into place next to a little lake for the water wheel. I then etched out some rivers flowing down the hill to the edge of the biome, before carving out a large stretch of farmland for our farmer to grow crops in. So that everything is nicely accessible for you guys and the villagers living here, I created some bridges to cross the rivers I just made, before finally decorating the farmhouse with some vines, sort of like ivy creeping up the walls of the building to finish off this transformation, without spoiling the interior for you guys. This one has gotta be one of my favourites so far. And finally, onto our last profession building for this village, the fisherman. Now this building has a bit of a story, and is said to be the home of the founders of this village. They pretty much live in a miniature castle on the outskirts of the meadow, which gave me an opportunity to squeeze a medieval English castle into this build somewhere. In the USW2, many of the noble families of the island earned their wealth and status through their business, and this family made a hefty buck from being the most talented in their field. Known as the Legends of the Line, the Hookwell family gained their wealth in a pretty unusual way. The Meadow's fisherman villager, George Hookwell, is said to have an uncanny ability to understand water and the life within it, catching the most valuable fish in the land. One day, whilst out fishing, he discovered a strange artifact, the Heart of the Sea, which he used to craft an underwater conduit. Able to explore the depths like never before, he discovered hidden treasures and rare fish, bringing settlers to the meadow, resulting in the establishment of the village, as well as attracting merchants from distant lands, making the family a fortune. So that explains this little castle where the fisherman lives, which has plenty of space for the whole Hookwell family, as well as all their fishing supplies, a little boathouse, and even a fishing deck attached to the main tower, so George can teach his grandkids his craft from the comfort of his own castle. So while I build the villagers' remaining homes, you guys are probably wondering how this village relates to the overarching story of this world. Well, this village was actually said to be the original home of Steve. Over the years, the community developed a mine shaft, which we'll tackle in the Caves episode of the series, to gather materials, until eventually they dug too deep into the depths of the island, awakening a fearsome creature from another realm. The rumblings from the End Realm is what triggered the fracturing of the island and the biome phenomenon you see here today. And the villagers who lived here fled to other biomes, to get as far as they could from this unknown threat. Steve, however, stayed put. In fact, he took himself further into the danger, crafting his dirt hut base right above the source of energy surges that had fractured the island, so he could investigate and securely lock the gateway from the outside world, as you guys already know. The Meadow village itself remained largely intact, but abandoned. So this is technically an abandoned village transformation, as you may have guessed from the vanilla abandoned village that was here at the start. When you find yourselves awaking on this strange island, the Meadow village will be a little worse for wear, and your very first quest will be to restore the village so that the villagers will return home. And you may even receive the first clue to the island's treasure hunt, said to have been set up by Steve himself. Anyway, on to my final task for this transformation, decorations. I kick things off by upgrading the village bell, creating a tall medieval structure which may or may not use an invisible rabbit to keep the rope in place. I then moved on to redesigning the vanilla village lantern, which I've never been too keen on, to be honest. I created a couple of hanging lantern options, with one that I could attach to buildings, as well as a traditional upright lantern. Next, I turned my attention to the pile of pumpkins and hay from the vanilla village, which I of course had to make some little wagons for. My favourite is probably the tipped over one, and I think it's little details like this that really make a build feel immersive and alive. With some wagons ready to place around the village, I decided to also make a small upgrade to the farmland you find in vanilla villages, before building a scarecrow to place in the farmers' wheat fields to protect the crops from, well, I'm not sure what actually, since there aren't crows in Minecraft. Next, I built a couple of wheelbarrows for the villagers to use for their gardening, and then I designed a cute little well as an extra water source for them too. On that gardening theme, I thought it'd be cool to build a few flower beds to add some colour throughout the village. And of course, didn't forget to transform the vanilla market stalls, where you guys will find plenty of villagers to trade with in the village. For the last few details, I built a large beverage barrel, which you may have spotted in the tavern's interior as well, along with some large piles of logs for the villagers to source wood from. I couldn't resist building a little medieval inspired pig pen to place alongside the farmer's profession building, and even returned to the village temple to build a graveyard, with a variety of tombs and gravestones adorned with a mixture of flowers, where the Meadow villagers can honour their lost loved ones. With all my decorations finally complete, I spent ages choosing the perfect spot for each detail, setting everything in place throughout the village. I created a little market area in the square where you'll find the tavern and bakery, as this area is the most bustling part of the whole village, and it just made sense for all the trading action to be focused around this square. With the final details set in place, I surrounded the village with trees and flowers to wrap up my upgrade of the Meadow village. And so, with a crazy start to the USW2, let's take a look at how the Meadow transformation turned out. Wow guys, what a start to the project. This world already has so much depth and playability, and our Meadow transformation is a great hub for an adventure. Which biome do you want to see next? We've got more than 12 to choose from, and you guys have given me so many cool ideas already. Don't forget to check out the original USW on the Minecraft Marketplace for Bedrock and the Java Quests pack on my Patreon. And be sure to like and subscribe if you want me to continue with the project and release the world download. Apart from that, I'll see you in the next one.